There are moments in life when everything you thought was solid shatters before your eyes, leaving you in the rubble of your own heartache. This is one of those stories, where betrayal isn't just a wound, it's a reminder that the truth always finds a way to surface. And once it does, nothing will ever be the same. The ties that bind us can sometimes become the very things that hold us captive. When a secret so deep is uncovered, it threatens to destroy everything we've worked for. But what happens when we decide to face the truth, no matter how painful? This is a story of confronting the impossible, embracing healing, and discovering that redemption often starts with a single, painful truth. I'm Sarah Ellis, 38 years old, living in the heart of Los Angeles. From the outside, everything seems perfect. I'm a public relations executive, driven and successful, with a thriving career and a beautiful apartment. People often tell me how lucky I am. And for the most part, I believed them. But beneath the polished surface, cracks were starting to appear. My marriage to Mark had always felt like something I could depend on. We'd been together for 15 years. We had a rhythm, an understanding of each other that felt unbreakable. Or so I thought. Lately, though, something was off. Mark's late nights, his sudden obsession with his phone, and the subtle shifts in his demeanor, everything about him was starting to feel foreign. I pushed it to the back of my mind. After all, work was my escape, right? But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I just wasn't ready to face it yet. Mark is 40, a successful architect, handsome and charming. We met when we were in our late 20s, and it felt like fate. He was everything I thought I wanted, smart, ambitious, and utterly captivating. But as the years passed, I began to notice things I hadn't before. He was consumed by his career, by his desire for success, and I buried myself in my own work. But tonight, everything changed. As I stood in the kitchen, scrolling through my phone, my eyes caught a text notification from Mark's phone on the counter. My heart skipped a beat. It was from a woman named Melissa. The message was simple, but it hit me like a freight train. Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you. My fingers trembled as I stared at the words, my mind reeling. How could this happen? How could I have missed this? I felt sick. My world, the one I thought I understood, was crumbling around me. The betrayal wasn't just a blow, it was a complete destruction of everything I thought was secure. I knew in that moment, I couldn't ignore this anymore. I waited for Mark that night. The tension in the air was suffocating, and I could barely breathe. When he walked through the door, I barely recognized him. His eyes were tired, his smile forced. He had no idea that I had discovered his secret. Mark, I said, my voice shaking, but determined. Who is Melissa? He froze. His face paled, and I could see the guilt written all over him. For a moment, he didn't speak, as if the weight of the truth was too much for him to carry. But then, he sighed deeply, and the words I never thought I'd hear tumbled out of his mouth. I've been seeing her, he confessed, his voice small and defeated. I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't know how to tell you. It just happened. His apology didn't make it better. It didn't erase the hurt, the anger, the betrayal. All I could feel was the sharp pain in my chest, the disbelief that the man I had loved, the man I had trusted with everything, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. The days that followed were a blur of pain. Mark tried to apologize, tried to explain that it wasn't about me, that it was his own inability to communicate his needs, his own insecurities that led him to make such a destructive choice. But I couldn't hear him. All I could feel was the crushing weight of the betrayal. I left our apartment, retreating to a quiet beach house in Malibu, hoping to find clarity in the solitude. But what I found instead was a broken version of myself. I had spent so many years focusing on my career, on building this life, that I had neglected the very thing that mattered most, my marriage, my family. The pain of betrayal stung, but it was also a wake-up call. It wasn't just Mark who had failed. I had, too. I had allowed my work to consume me, to push my emotions aside in the name of success. Now, all I had was a shattered marriage and a broken heart. It had been weeks since I discovered Mark's affair. He called me, begged for forgiveness, told me he was ready to do whatever it took to make things right. But forgiveness wasn't something I could give easily, not yet, not when the wounds were still so fresh. I took time to reflect. Could I forgive him? Could we rebuild what we once had? Or was it too late? I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about Mark. It was about me, too. I had to forgive myself for allowing the distance to grow between us, for not seeing the signs. And as much as it hurt, I had to decide if our relationship was worth fighting for. After much thought, I agreed to therapy. We both needed help, Mark to understand his actions and me to rebuild my trust. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my life again. And that was the first step toward healing. Therapy was a grueling process. There were moments when I wanted to walk away, when the pain of betrayal felt too heavy to carry. But with every session, Mark and I began to understand each other in ways we never had before. We learned to communicate, to be vulnerable, and to confront the issues that had driven us apart. Mark made changes, he was more present, more attentive, and he worked hard to regain my trust. I saw the man I fell in love with again, but I also saw the flaws, the insecurities, and the mistakes. And for the first time, I was willing to accept that no one is perfect, not him, not me, and certainly not our relationship. Months passed, and while the road wasn't always easy, Mark and I found a new rhythm. Our marriage was stronger, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. We faced the truth, we forgave each other, and we committed to growing together. And though the scars of betrayal remained, they no longer defined us. But as we navigated this fragile new chapter, I couldn't help but wonder, can we ever truly move past the wounds of the past? Is forgiveness enough to heal all the damage that betrayal caused? As the days went on, something deep inside me began to stir. I knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, because the truth is, healing isn't linear. Would Mark and I be able to rebuild trust completely? Or would the cracks of the past always linger beneath the surface? Is there such a thing as a love that can never be broken, or are we simply pretending to forget? But there's more to this journey than we've seen so far, and just when I thought I had everything figured out, a new revelation is about to turn our world upside down. What happens when the past refuses to stay buried? Thank you so much for watching and joining me on this emotional journey. Your support means the world to me. But before you go, let me know your thoughts. What do you think? Can Mark and Sarah truly rebuild their trust, or will their past haunt them forever? Please like, comment, and share your opinions, I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to follow their story, make sure to hit that subscribe button below and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any of my upcoming raw and real videos. You'll be the first to know when the next story drops. See you in the next one.